mind as you kind of look at that career anchors and the competency that you build. Here's some research that was done that I promised to share, and I'll kind of let you glance through this. This is the second annual baseline report that was done for all product manager, product marketing professionals in India. Roughly about 400 plus people were interviewed and surveyed to develop, hey, what is the state of product management, product leadership roles, career path in India, specifically in the Indian context. This research was commissioned because very few research reports were available, or a lot of data was not quantified up until now. So this is what the research, and you can download the full report from the website. But here's some interesting statistics on how people view what they do, all the way down to how many emails do they read, how many hours do they work, and so on and so forth. Right? So just kind of give you a flavor of the state of the union or the ground reality of this career path in India. And by the way, do post your questions, and if there are some that we can answer right away, would be happy to answer that right away as well. Yeah? Okay, so 3 different trips. I wanna hopefully you got a glance over and kind of see some of these things. You can also see from the graph here that MNCs are a lot more mature in terms of their hiring, in terms of their definition of the role, in terms of the maturity or the clarity of how you move up in the organization in a product management versus startups. Startups tend to be a little bit chaotic. On the positive side, if you're looking at a role of moving into a startup in a product leadership type of role, the amount of A, freedom, and B, the scope is obviously going to be a lot more exciting in certain scenarios than maybe an MNC, right? Because in an MNC, a lot of that culture might be still driven, a lot of the decisions might be still driven out of your headquarters, in Europe or US or wherever it is. Whereas in a startup, there isn't a whole lot of people to look around you. You end up doing everything, and so it allows you to kind of a broader exposure, a bigger spectrum of what can be done or can be achieved from a startup perspective. Okay, so 3 tips I want to share with you. Again, specifically in the context of India, and what we've seen with hundreds of professionals who we've been in touch with. Obviously, I was hiring manager, so I set up product management from scratch. We helped several companies, set product management. So this is our kind of understanding of how things certainly work. Right. So 3 things, if I distill this down, one is, hey, don't confuse the product management role with the title, which means some companies will have very interesting titles, very creative, business card decorations, if I may. So don't confuse title with the actual role. What we've been discussing so far is really the role, and what we will continue to discuss moving forward is really talking about the role, because titles are dependent on each company, right? I mean, there are very creative titles, as creative as a requirement scientist. I am not kidding. This is a real title for a real product manager in a company that I think most of you would have heard of. The guy essentially said, look, requirements is what I do. Scientist is what is considered higher cultural value from a title perspective. So he went to HR and said, hey, look, I need to be called requirement scientist. So there you go. He's got that title now. So don't confuse the role with the title. Second, when you look at product manager, when you look at product management as a what is expected to have, right? From a hiring manager perspective, what are the kind of things you are expected to have? There are essentially 3 things. When a hiring manager looks at it, and this is important for you yourself to evaluate as you kind of get ready to start playing that role within your own company, right? Within your own structure, within your own wherever you are. First is your domain skills. Do you understand the domain you're in? Do you have enough empathy for the customer? So the domains could be anything from e-commerce to manufacturing to, you know, mobile apps to, enterprise software to routing and telecommunications. Could be anything, right? So the first is, do you have enough domain skills for that particular company or the geography or the region that you're now held accountable for. Second is functional skills. Functional skills are all the skills that we just finished talking about, from market analysis to strategic planning, right? User experience design, requirements management, positioning. All of these are functional skills. These are best practices and frameworks which allow you to make better decisions. How do you prioritize? Multiple stakeholders, multiple customers, they all want conflicting things. How do you prioritize, right? So these are all functional skills. And the third one is extremely critical as well, is what we kind of lump them into what we call a leadership skills. So this is, hey, do you have what it takes to present to senior executives and get buy-in? Can you convince a VC to put money into your venture? Can you convince your upper management team to fund the 3 engineers that you want for your project? Do you have negotiation skills to resolve conflict between stakeholders, between team members? The storytelling technique, how good are you in presenting facts and data? All of these are extremely important leadership skills. So those are the kind of 3 things that we look for in a product leader, product manager. And the third tip that I can give you and advice kind of from the trenches is, can you build a demonstrable set of competencies? Can you build a portfolio of certain skill sets before you actually interview, before you consider, or before you even talk to anyone formally about moving into this role? This role is highly hands-on and practical role, right? So think of this as like a mini CEO. I mean, essentially, you're like a mini CEO of that product, if not the company. And so now, when somebody is hiring, when somebody is considering you to move into that role, the first question they're going to ask, whether it's a formal interview or otherwise, is, hey, what have you done? What kind of things can you demonstrate or show? And this is very important sometimes, often overlooked by many, many senior professionals who take a viewpoint of entitlement. I've been in the company for 10 years. I know e-commerce, and hence I'm ready for the job, right? I'm from certain school. I've done my MBA from certain place, and hence I'm ready for this job. So the entitlement view, which is I'm entitled to this, I think is a very risky bet. My recommendation is to flip that around and almost create a view, instead of entitlement, a demonstrable view. Here's what I've done, and hence I need this job. Here's what I'm doing already, hence I need to formally move into this role. This is extremely critical because there is really no prerequisites per se on who can become a product manager. So you don't have to go to a certain school or a certain college or a certain, go through, your last name doesn't have to start with an S. None of these things matter. At the end of the day, a hiring manager is looking at, can you really perform the role of product management and demonstrate the skill sets. So this is extremely important, that I can share with you kind of 3 things as you think through and move your own mindset and skill set towards